Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back for another review of the FX slash Hulu show Shogun, where today we're going to be recapping episode 5, Broken to the Fist. Nani and I are here, and as we do each and every week, give you a short little review, our thoughts about the episodes, and then we'll get into the episode in its entirety. So, I'm starting off with myself first this week. This was definitely an episode that really turns the page on this entire series because a lot has happened. I can, it's good to fulfill, in the sense of some of the predictions I made to come to fruition in this episode. But the shocking conclusion of this episode really lets us know that we're in for a ride the remaining part of the season. So a lot of things happen in terms of really pushing the story forward. And I'm just very excited to get into it. But yeah, I thought this episode was really great. They stepped away from the brutality. Yeah, we saw the after effects, or should we say the leftover of the bloods, the bloods,
Aftermath.
the aftermath. There we go, of the blood and guts. I tried to combine the two words together from the cannon's little move that happened. But we'll talk about it all. But for it to really focus on the plot this episode and really the stakes of this season, coming back to the real issue at hand. This episode was really, really good. So I enjoyed this week's and definitely can't wait to talk about it. But what about you?
Ooh, this episode was heavy. I feel like this episode was, I don't know, a lot more emotion. This one was definitely toying with the characters, is like taunting them. Every character in this episode kind of has like some kind of, not necessarily like a past coming back, but so many things are tying together. We're really learning more about these characters. And oh man, this episode was just really kind of dark. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. But yeah, folks, let us know in the comments what's your thoughts about this episode. Tap in right now. And without further ado, let's get into this episode, breaking it all down here. As I mentioned, we do have the aftermath of the horses, the bodies, everything. This complete bloodbath there, just entirely brutal, which we know was by what happened from the conclusion of last episode, where we have Nakakoto calling his own shot here, turning the cannons on Jozen, which we all knew was going to be there was definitely going to be some repercussions of that. But man, this next scene, I yelled out, holy shit, because we saw from the horizons that there were people coming. Now, granted, some of you all may have instantly picked up that it was Toranaga coming. But for me, I did not know. I was just like, trouble is coming.
I thought it was Ashido. I was like, already?
I thought it was Ashido too. And I was like, already? Like, my man, honestly, I wouldn't have been mad if they would have went that route. But seeing that it was Toranaga who went and clearly got all of the people, a lot more, like tons and tons of soldiers, and a return that I call since his mild departure, which some assumed his death. Bontoro returns with scratches on his face, and he is the 1v1000 king at this rate. And I think his reputation really is what it is because they always talked about like he's just that formidable samurai. So the odds was against him, and he proved by being gone, I think they said for 20 days, that even that wasn't going to stop him. But what to really make of that is his return and how beautiful they shot this. Looking at Mariko, looking at him, shocked. There's cheers. I don't want to say cheers, but there's definitely like a measure of shock across the board. Nakakoto kind of rooting it on, like, oh my God, the great Bontoro returns, but Mariko a little lost of words here, and Blackthorne looking over her shoulder, kind of looking like, oh boy, and we kind of know why that could be problematic for him in a couple of different ways. But Toranaga returns, and he just has soldiers for days, and it is just a crazy opening before we hit the title screen. So with just that scene alone, that opening here, what was your thoughts about Toranaga showing up with all the men and then Baltoro returning?
I guess for me, same thing. Like first glance, I was like, "Oh shit, it's about to like pop off right now," but it wasn't them yet. But it was a cool scene because you saw them like cleaning the corpses, and like I don't know, I just thought it was gonna instantly be like war. But I guess it's better like this, a little build up, and then same thing. Super surprised to see Buntaro back. You definitely called that out. And then oh well, I don't know. We'll get to the next part yet, but yeah, definitely it was a shocking.
Yeah, I think Mariko's look too told the story in its own, and it quickly was fleshed out in this episode. But while there was a little bit of a shock, there was definitely, I saw hesitation and mild fear. And I think it was interesting that Blackthorn looked at her because he knew there was going to be a reaction there. But who would have thought the events? I mean, clearly she did, but who would have thought the events of what his return would cause him back to the village here? But anyway, title screen there, and this is where just the start of, again, the shocking conclusion of this episode, as we know that Lady Ichiban is to return and is on her way back to Ahsoka, which here's the thing. They thought that she was prisoner, but everybody knew she wasn't prisoner. They said she could come and go as she pleased. And with her returning, never would have thought just, and I guess it makes sense, but never would have thought of the ripple effects of her return and what her objectives are and so on. We'll leave all that for the end of this episode, but what it seemed to be just a small notion of her return is a monumental shift of power going forward. But we'll talk about that at the end. But anywho, as I mentioned, now Toranaga. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we even get back to there, Toranaga. The discussion is he needs to be impeached. So listen, the council, that's their whole goal. They need to impeach him because the resignation, his Toranaga's resignation, makes this all impossible. And even if there's a vote for a replacement, which I might as well just talk about that scene now, no one can agree. There's so many suggestions. Everybody's like, hey, how about this person, this cousin, this brother, this whatever. Everybody has something negative to say about anybody nominated. To me, that spokes that as much as y'all do have a common goal, you all are not on the same page, which is even more problematic than Toranaga not being in the council and then thus making this an impossible way. His resignation makes it impossible for the council to be incomplete, and thus the impeachment to be impossible here. Did you pick up anything with everybody and their dysfunction and how they're kind of nominating folks? And people were like, nah, that person this, that person that. There was definitely some low blows being thrown in there. We won't bring all the language to the show. But people were playing dirty about other folks' nominations. What did you think about it?
I feel like it just shows that they all have like ulterior motives. Like none of them can really come to an agreement because even the religion is coming into play because they don't want someone taking the seat that's Christian.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, they don't want someone taking the seat that's Christian. And then I guess they want to keep like the old ways in power. And then like, yeah, they just won't get along. So I kind of feel like it's all because they want to implement their own ideologies instead of keeping things as they are or progressing. They all want to do their own thing.
Yeah, and you know, I think, and I'm not sure if I'm entirely speaking correctly, but I believe the notion is that because of religion, and religion kind of is the way of the world here, the moment you implement religion into your council does thus cause problematic hierarchy for all of you all. You know, that easily becomes the most dominant person or seat within the council because of the backing of the religion and all we know that's happening with religion and how it's shaping the world and how they're taking over territories, wars, and building and infrastructure and all these different things that are happening. So if you truly want to be in power, having religion at a seat at your table definitely is not going to pay good for you. And as they said back then, they said, if you are not down with my man Jesus. They're coming out here to kill you. So so not good to overly expose yourself to so to say social differences here. But I thought it was interesting because even in this scene, and after, I don't know if it's this scene exactly or a couple of scenes after, but Oshido kind of looking like he has a plan as you see one of the folks aggressively coughing. I'm not sure what he really made of that, but he definitely had this look like, I got something planned. Did you pick up on anything there?
I was trying to understand that too. I was wondering if he has some kind of sickness or if he was poisoned or yeah, I was wondering what's I picked that up too.
Yeah. Can't trust nobody at this rate, right? Um, so with that being said, as I mentioned, Toranaga talks about Bontoro's return after 20 days, and just hearing about him surviving. We hear Mariko being awed at his survival, but she still doesn't look pleased, and it's still very much, as a viewer here, you're kind of like, something's not right with this, because this has been somebody completely loyal to Toranaga and really has been wearing his poker face up into her kind of letting her guard down a little bit for Blackthorn, and that's obviously by pleasure here. But this is a different type of reveal because she looks nervous, she looks worried, she looks, it's almost like the boogeyman is getting ready to come out. And hell, maybe Bontoro is the boogeyman, because anything that he was around seemed to have been providing a level of uneasiness for everybody. And we'll talk about it in 1 second, but while Toranaga was gone, Mariko gives him the diary of everything that Blackthorn has done since he's left. And I think he acknowledges his worth. He appreciates what he's done. There seems to be a positive rapport between them in terms of he did what he was supposed to do. Everything looks well. The mission is going the way they want it to. But with that being said, he has now granted Bontoro, I don't know the word to use, but we'll just say residency in the Arjun's house, or Blackthorn's house here. So, a house that was once peaceful, filled with great moments of food, getting hot at night at times, which I still think it was Mariko that was the
I
one.
think
And
it
I
was
think,
Lady Yoshida.
you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, because now they're like, oh, so your husband can now join the house. What's interesting about this is, to me, again, learning more about the culture here, I was like, yeah, it does, her husband, but understanding that is Blackthorn's house, and because of his rank, and because of just what it means to, I guess, in a sense, and help me out here, in a sense of when you're giving that house, it's an honor, and thus you're like the ruler of the house, so you call all the shots, and which we know is his words have consequences behind them, and even to the highest degree, that's his house, that's his level of, like, it's his place of peace, but it's almost like his sanctuary, in a way that you don't want to disturb what happens in there. He calls the shots, he makes what happens here. So to grant Bontoro access to that is a really interesting thing, but it's also because that Mariko really wasn't happy about this and knew that it was going to be problematic here. And before that's all done, I will come back to that question in 1 second here. He did want to ask really quickly, was it my son's idea to murder Jojen? And which Lady Mariko says, I don't know, which is true. She didn't lie. And as he mentioned, killing him was foolish, and yeah, war is coming. So we'll come back to this in 1 second. But hearing Bontoro being assigned to the Arjun's house, or Blackthorn's house here, what did you think this was a recipe for coming later on this episode?
Yeah, I definitely thought something bad is surely gonna happen. You could just feel the energy drop when Butaro's around. Like, even Mariko is very, like, more stoic now, and is just like, I'm gonna translate. And, like, she was even, I guess we'll get to that a little later, but, like, trying to keep the peace by doing her duty to both. So you could already tell like just how much tension is in the house. And the same thing with Fuji. You can also tell like there's tension there as well because that's her uncle. Yes,
Yep.
that's her uncle.
Yeah. And that's why I make sure clearly I state that, with Blackthorn being a Hatamoto, like with that rank there, that honor, that also means that, again, speaking of a level of hierarchy, that folks acknowledge that and have to respect that one way or another. So, in a sense, it is a great honor, by way of everybody's loyalty to Toranaga, that Lady Mariko and Lady Fuji, and even the returning Bontora, realizing that this is a great honor for them to be in this house one way or another. And I say all that to say, because I didn't know it at this moment, but I say that to say by the events that comes a little bit later on. But yeah, listen, here's the moment I've really been waiting for, and I definitely I over predicted in this. I thought this was gonna be way more explosive than what it was. It had its little moments, but I definitely thought it was gonna be like way worse. But it's father-son time, and for a moment, I'm looking at Toranaga and I'm like, yeah, he's brewing up to Kirk. Like, he's not happy knowing, what Nagakoto did with this. But I had no idea he was going to take the approach of saying, in the sense of like, you, my son, were basically manipulated, because he doesn't feel his son could have ever put something like this together. And I don't think it's entirely wrong, because I think that, in a sense, like, granted, we knew that Yabushige, we know that, like, he's manipulative, he plays both sides, but he really didn't have anything to do with this. He was aware that his nephew and Omi had a moment of them being together, but I don't think he realized that, like, it was ever going to be make sure getting all the names right, Nagakoto's idea to put this together. So there's a little bit of positive deniability here, but ultimately it's because Toranaga just does not think his son was ever capable of this. So this hurts in two different ways, because one, we got to talk about like a son here in Nagakoto who just wants to make his dad proud. This is an arc we see across the board here. And, he had a moment where he's like, man, let my dad know what I did. And rather, he was foolish enough to not know what was going to be the aftermath for this. He actually thought he got a win by what he did. And with that, he gets a big lesson about animals and men and the correlation between the two, even getting the name drop of the title here, Broken to the Fist. And then lastly enough, he's stripped of his title here, of everything that he's been taught in terms of being a part of the canon regiment, which is interesting because whether what he did was bad or not, he's good at it. He actually did do what he did. What was your thoughts about the father-son conversation here? And how do you think this is going to sort of play into the future with their relationship?
Yeah, that scene didn't play out at all how I expected it to. I wasn't sure if whether he would be upset or proud, but I didn't think that he would think that his son wasn't capable of coming up with it.
Yeah.
He was basically like, oh, maybe it was the treacherous nephew that tricked you and you fell into this trap, and then went into the whole like metaphors about the animals and basically telling his son he ain't shit. Like it was pretty messed up. Like I felt bad. It was like he just did this whole like major like move to like protect his father, and his dad's like, you couldn't have done this, but this was foolish anyway. Just like, ugh.
Yeah, I think there's nothing worse when when your father or any parent tells you you're bad at something and then bows up another person, because in a way, yeah, he's disrespecting his son, but he's also like, but on me, oh, he definitely could have did this, to
He
the
manned
point
up.
that he,
It's like,
yeah. So like it went from like who manipulated you to like, yeah, Omi's smart, he probably would have did this. So ultimately him getting the promotion. We'll talk about that in a second because I have my thoughts. But yeah, I think it's going to tarnish their relationship in a way that's going to make him rebel. That's going to be completely that could be problematic for sure. And we're going to see how Toranaga is able to navigate with that. But anyway, well, we go back to Ahsoka and
Osaka.
Osaka. Thank you, Ahsoka, because not Star Wars
Star
here.
Wars.
Osaka, Japan. Uh, we're not using the Force today. Oshido has a package. I 1,000% knew what this was from a mile away. Did you?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, and it was Josen's head, and
That's how you
Oshido
send a
didn't.
message.
Yeah, he didn't respond in the way I thought. This is our antagonist here that's not really showing pure antagonistic qualities. And I didn't know, shall I say. I didn't know because there was going to be somebody that really was coming down the line. And that's why. Because I'm thinking like, if we have our protagonist antagonist, if it's obviously going to be Toranaga versus Ishido, then like Toranaga easily makes you like him, you believe him, you follow his calls and so on. So you get him as our good guy. And if it's all about the conflict between him and Ishido, you're just like, I'm not feeling that clash like that's really going to drive this season all the way to the ultimate war, because it seems like only one is really making moves right now, while the other, I mean, let's just call it what it is, the council, all they've been doing thus far is talk about ways to impeach them. It's been a lot of them just saying, oh, we got to get rid of them, we got to get rid of them, we got to get rid of them. Every single, even this entire episode, they had like 3 or 4 scenes of them kept saying, we got to impeach them. I'm thinking as the viewer, like, we know.
Like, what are you gonna do about it?
But yeah, that's why the interesting end of this episode really just shakes everything up here. But yeah, he gets the head, and yeah, we, as expected, we knew that. I mean, as I predicted, I knew that's what that was. But we're going to have to see how that sort of puts a light under Ishido to really provoke this war, or what he does, because maybe he isn't the one to initiate it. We'll see. Blackthorn is back at home, and just sort of just talking about this bird here that he was gifted, and everybody's looking, and he's hanging it up, and there's this rotten, and the consort's there, and he got his Japanese going better. So nothing too much to make of that right now. Just knowing that like he told everybody to leave the bird there, and if they touch it, they die. So there's that. Fuji immediately goes in the house, gets everything in order. But then we also see a scene of Fuji with her uncle, and he immediately asks for Lady Mariko, and not happy. He's not happy. Talking about Bontoro, he's not happy. He's under the same roof as Blackthorn, but as I mentioned, Fuji lets him know that he is the Hatamoto, and this is one of the most interesting statements here, because as Bontoro is kind of trying to get away of everything, Fuji mentions that he prefers the company of other women, because he asks, if you're the consort, so are you, I forgot the terminology used, but basically asks, are you the one providing him the services? And nah, he prefer other women. That's why I told you it ain't Fuji. And he lit that Fuji last episode and was like, wait, what? So it's not Fuji 1,000%. We don't even have to question that. The drama here, because Fuji isn't aware of who it is, but we know, at least I know for sure, that it was Lady Mariko, which makes this all just one big reality show stirring up about Mariko and her husband, and now her love interest in Blackthorn, and they're all at the same house. But I think it's intentional that they threw that in there, that say he likes the attention of other women. Well, who are those other women? Because I think it's going to become a moment of questioning about that. And I think he will pick up on how they're fair to each other. And I mean, he has been, there for her through things, letting her know her value and being there when she was beat, and running after her after she kind of went to, just off the grid for a little bit, just to kind of make sure she's okay. I mean, I think there's definitely qualities of him that she admires and she probably adores, but her husband's here, and how does that shake? And how's the trauma of everything with him? How's that all going to shake out? But them being all under the same roof, we got a long extra 5 episodes to go with how that's going to all play out. What did you think about just how Bontoro's presence in the house has everybody looking over their shoulders?
I feel like already, like from the jump, he was like, trying to take like a ownership, like authoritarian. I think that's the word I'm looking for. He's used to being the man of the house. He's used to people like fretting when he's around and serving him. So him being like a guest in someone else's like home is a problem. And you can already tell like just by like the questions he's asking. And he's like, "Oh, what do you mean? He's this what?" Like he's just this like white dude like that is living in my village, living in my home. That's my wife. Like that's my people. Like he just feels, why should I bother like serving this guy? Like what does he have to do with
Mhm.
me? So I already just knew just from his personality alone, not even just John being in the house, just this guy alone, Buntaro's already like an asshole,
Yeah.
and controlling. So I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's just not gonna be good. And just that little conversation alone with his niece, you could just tell she just like, what am I supposed to say? Everyone around him just feels like overwhelmed and nervous.
Yeah. There's definitely ego involved, and my man is absolutely envious of
Hmm.
him receiving the title of of the Hatamoto. But anywho, we get Yabushige and Toranaga, and Yabushige's out here giving praise about everything that Blackthorne has been able to accomplish with the cannon training. But Toranaga's like, okay, cool. He already got all the updates. He want to know, was it him that manipulated his son? I mean, this is easily the first choice for me, is because we know how shifty he is already as a person. But he makes it very clear that he knows that Yabushige is playing both sides here. But as he mentioned, he says, listen, my son isn't clever enough to plan it. And then he was just like, but Omi, and this is where the whole conversation about Omi and them kicking it at night, and maybe it has something to do with that. So he instantly is like, okay, because like, this is just what Yabushige does here. He's like, what can I do? Like, do you want me to discipline my son? Now, this is where I thought was interesting, because I was like, I think he's thinking a little bit beyond disciplining his son. I really thought that Toranaga was going to be like, I'm either going to need you to off your son or bring him here so I can. I thought he was, I keep saying son, his
Nephew.
nephew. Yeah. I just thought he was definitely going to make an example of him. And maybe Toranaga's not one to for unnecessary blood, and maybe he values life just a little bit more, and he now is stepping a little bit outside of the customs. But I also think that like it was very, very, very close of an idea that he was. To me, I say all that to say, because while he thought one direction in one extreme, the other extreme was, nah, why? That's a man that knows a little something there. Give him a promotion. He would now command the cannon regiment or the artillery from Blackthorne, which was just like, okay, hold on, wait a minute now. You put your son down, stripped him from this. You give Omi, who is suspected of being a part of the plan and killing Josen with your son, and you promote him. And at the same time, too, why wouldn't Yabushige be your person to do so? I had a lot of questions, but I instantly thought this was him playing chess. He is working the board right now, and this is definitely going to pay dividends somewhere down the line. What did you think about him going where Yabushige thought he was going to have to discipline his nephew to ultimately tell his nephew he's getting a promotion?
I think Yabushige always has like his own interests in mind. I don't think he cares about anyone else, even his nephew. I think that he would have thrown his nephew to the wolves had it been the other way. But I also think that he probably doesn't even think that Omi has anything to do with it, but he probably just wants to like be on Toranaga's good graces. So he probably just went along with the, well, I did see them drinking together, like, just throwing hints that like maybe I don't really think he even thinks his nephew came up with it, but I think he wants to act like, oh, we have a part in this. So we still have like a safe place under Toranaga. Like we still have a piece under
Yeah.
Toranaga. Like, so I think he's just always making his own moves. And then in terms of Toranaga, I thought this was messed up. Like I'm just like, damn, he really like has no faith in his son.
So
Also,
Yabushige,
oh, sorry.
what?
I was gonna say
No,
one
go
more
ahead.
point. I also think that Omi is scared of his uncle, because he was like, "Oh, but you can take charge if you want," and his uncle's like, he's like, "What? Like you're telling me? Like I own
Yeah,
you, boy."
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we get there in like 1 second, but yeah, totally agree. So yeah, he does have to inform his nephew of his promotion. Yeah, and this is exactly where it happens that year because, like, he says, "Listen, I need you to find Toranaga spy," and this is him just immediately after that conversation, still playing both sides here.
Hmm.
But like at the point now where he's informed about the promotion, as you mentioned, he's just like, "No, how could I get this when it's yours? Like, you can't have anything that's already been mine."
Yeah,
So
he said you can't relinquish what already
yeah,
belongs to me.
exactly. So, now we go back to about to say Japan, Osaka, Japan. Now, because I'm sorry, I missed this whole part. I'm sorry, I'm reading the scene wrong here. So at this rate now, this is when, and this is just wild to me here. Yabushige telling one of his men that he needs to go back to
Mm.
Osaka in order to smooth things over with Ashido. And I mean, if you think that he's going to go there and this is going to be some, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I wouldn't want to be that guy to have to go back and relay any messages, not knowing that Ashido doesn't know what side of the fence I'm playing right now. You know, am I here for as an informant, or am I here to like bring you valuable information? You know, do you understand my loyalty one way or another? Just wouldn't be me, but you know, gotta do what you gotta do because that's what orders are.
Yeah, he's
But anyway,
basically playing both sides because he's like to Toranaga, "Well, I'm stuck with you. I have no other options." And then on the other end, he's
mm-hmm,
like, "Send a spy, send a spy."
mm-hmm. So the bird, yeah, the birds and flies is just completely yuck. Fuji and Mariko just having their moment here. But uh, with this moment, you know, everybody there and with Lord Toto, as he likes to be called here, everybody just knows that trouble is looming. And he's sitting there and he's throwing off words. He actually catches his fly, which I thought this was super interesting here. But while everybody's just eating and what were they eating here? I know this was outside when they were just fussing about
Yeah,
each
that
other
he's
and whatnot.
contaminating the kitchen with his
Yeah,
stinky bird.
yeah. But he caught the fly, which I thought was cool, showing you just how accurate he is, Mr. Miyagi. And I definitely mean that in a very much of a Karate Kid reference with the fly. Um, but yeah, I think I think this episode really built an entire profile of Buntoro. This guy survived for 20 days by himself behind enemy lines. He is, to my knowledge, he looks good to go. He has some scratches on his face, but not injured. He has very swift precision. His arrow skills, untouchable. His archery skills, should we say, untouchable here. Putting both of those arrows in the same spot while being drunk and then catching the fly. We see that he's a little bit of a hothead. He's competitive. He has an ego. He's abusive. They completely build a profile on this person, and it makes sense considering that Mariko was definitely not sad to see him go when they left him ashore there, because this guy is definitely problematic for his wife. But with that being said, yeah, we're getting this conversation about bows versus cannon, and even to the point there where they're trying to offer up a little different cuisine. You know, Blackthorn talking about his rabbit stew. Everybody's like, yuck, it smell good. Look like they want to just Earl from looking at it here. But with that being said, they are throwing words at each other, and Lady Mariko is definitely taking the elementary school version of the translations, because she's not at all trying to elevate the drama, because she knows what's coming. She's been in this scenario before. She's been around him since she was 15, and the fact that she just knows what's brewing up, you know, she played it nice, man. You know, she didn't want to relay the word of monkey or any of the things about real drinking activity, but like this was just crazy because they have a sake battle and Lady Fuji is just looking like, wow, maybe she's not fully aware of what's going to happen to her uncle, but like things are quickly escalating here. And these boys, man, because boys are going to be boys, they're drinking, they're hammering them back. And even to the point where they're like, listen, cut them off. Like if they ask for more, there is no more. But it just only just keeps getting deeper and deeper into the night as they keep drinking more and more and more. Because at this point now, it is nothing but ego. The two of them puffing their chests out, who can drink the most, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But with that being said here, it gets even more crazy because even when him calling Bartoro, and no, he wants to be called Lord Toto. You know, he wants to hear, Blackthorn wants to hear about his story of his escape. I did too, and I'm mad we didn't get that. But he wasn't happy about that, man, because it's interesting that Lady Mariko kept telling him to be very cautious about his words. To my understanding, Blackthorn didn't say nothing much overly like disrespectful. He was asking regular questions. What do you? I mean, but I mean, I think I can answer my own question here, but maybe because of just his jealousy with how close Toranaga and Blackthorn are. But like Lady Mariko giving caution to like, you know, be careful with your words, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't quite see this popping off the way and how it did, the way it did, instantly the way it was. I definitely thought it was going to escalate to more of a change of blows and be a little bit more disrespectful, and Lady Mariko trying to filter it out as much as possible. But it wasn't that. It seems to just be at a point that the drinks just got to a point and they were just like, fuck it, let's do what it was. And that's when Bontoro said, where's my bow? Bring me my bow. I'm going to stop it right there. What did you think about the escalation of everything while they were drinking the sake the way they were?
So a couple points. First, I just want to say right before this scene, Fuji talks to Mariko and says that she thinks the Anjin might be in danger. And Mariko's like, why would he be in danger? So I think that whole part is Mariko trying to maybe de-escalate in her head already what might happen. Like she's probably trying like to be like, all right, Buntaro's back. Maybe we can make him happy. Maybe we can, you know, even like by, I guess, censoring Blackthorn's questions is also kind of like we have to keep Buntaro happy. Like maybe like, you know, just treat him like he did a good thing. He's back, and like let's, I don't know, make him look better, I guess, in a sense. And then back to like the whole outmatching, and like he's like, oh, my bow can outmatch your cannon. Basically, you know, it's just shit talking. Like everything down to the slurping of the soup became a competition. Like everything became a competition between these two. It was like you could just feel the tension in the room. And I think that's what Mariko was trying her best to like you said, like kind of censor the words a little bit, hold back, and kind of make the questions a little more respectful on both ends, and kind of get a point across, but not be too direct. And then back to Buntaro, this is my theory. My theory is that he didn't do shit, that somebody, I don't know, somebody saved him. Something else happened where he probably didn't do anything necessarily heroic, if that makes sense. Because he's too quick to like not boast about it. Like he has such a big ego. It's kind of like why doesn't he want to take the moment to brag to this like foreign man in front of like other women? Like he was kind of very quick to be like, well, what about you? What about you? Like instead of being like, well, guess what I did? I survived a bear. I got, you know what I mean? Like he was just very like throw it back to him. So it was like, all right, I'm curious to know what his story was with that, with the escape. And then he was like, heroism is for the dead, stories are for children. It was kind of like, it's a lot of what's the term that I'm looking for? But
beating around the bush?
Yeah, like definitely like he's not trying to answer this
evasive
question. Yeah, evasive. He's not trying to answer this question.
I thought that too, and I was like, God, he's good with his words. And I thought for a moment, like, yeah, why wouldn't you, Mr. Ego? You bragging about everything else. I blocked you. You know what I just did for 20 days?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're right. And that will be interesting to see if that actually will come into part. With that being said, yeah, now we get him asking for his bow, and he asked what pillar. This was interesting because Lady Mariko just knew what this was, and he picked the right, not knowing what the right was going to be. And those folks, those bows, so dangerously close to her face, she didn't budge or anything. First of all, they shot this crazy, but it had me literally like jaw drop. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Her none of a reaction, and even to the point that Blackthorn was like, "What are you doing? Move, 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 move." This was a lot, but again, I think this is just the conditioning and just the trauma that she's been enduring with him since she's been 15, to even to the point where after this, he basically exposes her, says, you need to tell him who you are. And this is where we go back to last week episode when she was talking about her family name. And I did look it up and I was correct about the family name. However, they are changing that character for the show. So it is, whether you're looking at history or looking at the show, that she is the daughter of Jinsai. Talks about that, and then talk about this horrific past about her brothers and sisters and even her mother, all executed by their father, and she has been able to do anything about this injustice because her husband orders her to do nothing, which, as she says, remember the eightfold fence, which is a name drop from last week's episode here in that story. So like, this is a lot of just unloading with emotions with Mariko, and just the fact that like one scene later, Blackthorn is passed out from the drinks, only for Lady Mariko to be being beat in the next room over. She was definitely abused, and Lady Fuji tried her best with her uncle but couldn't. But then ultimately we hear some very interesting things, and you had to like really pick up on it to understand, because it was at a point where their shifts go back to the culture where they're like, not in the sense of her danger or not in the sense of just her injuries or anything. They're like, we did not want you to see this, because they ultimately didn't want to disrespect his house. The most important thing, to the point that like the disrespect of the house could cause, and it's not even the extreme, but this is what it is. It's life or death for everything that happens here. You know, he can say, I feel disrespected in this, and she may find means to be executed. So she's like, I didn't want to disrespect your house and so on. And granted, this is just wild, man, because even after that, they talk about the house being cursed. We go outside and Blackthorn is yelling at Bontoro, and I just knew it was gonna be a matter of time before we had a scene between the two of them. And it looks like he may be drawing his sword, but in fact, he actually bows down and lays his sword down on the ground as a sign of almost what's the word I'm kind of looking for here? Like he's given up, but also in the sense of like being apologetic to him by letting him know that
like a mercy.
Yeah, mercy. It's absolutely mercy. Thank you. Great. Help help me out there. But as he says, I'm sorry for disturbing the harmony of your house. And he says, forgive me. And he instantly blames it on the alcohol. Which in this case, I'm like, all right, I forgive him. He did overdo it on the sake. But like, it was interesting that he did blame it on the alcohol here. Which, what else could he do? Because to me, this is his nature. Him beating Mariko up, him doing what he wants to do, taking charge, and just being the man of the household, and everybody one way or another being at mercy of his. But for him to apologize is like, holy heck. Does that just only explains to you just how this house works and how the hierarchy works? Because at the end of the day, if Blackthorn is to go complain about this to Toranaga, what is the consequences of this? And I guess he tried to get ahead of this for would never ever amount to that point. What did you think about this whole night of craziness, from the drinking, the bows, to the abuse, to him laying his sword down for mercy?
So another thing I want to point out, the end of that scene, we see where the arrows landed. And
Yeah,
that was like bullseye.
precision.
Both times.
Yeah.
So I was like, either he could be, blame it on the sake and whatever. But another, I guess, like way of him doing that is him trying to find a way to word this, but like kind of like disguising himself. I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like I'm just like a drunk. Like blame it on the situation. Let me get in his good graces, but I can
So
still
so
stab
you're
you in the back.
saying the whole drinking was a ploy. He was never really drunk, and the precision of his arrows was the biggest. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think he was that wasted. I think that's just his
complete ploy.
behavior. I think
Yeah,
that's just his behavior.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, he was accurate, and whether he just good at it being intoxicated or not, there is definitely some suspicion to
Hmm.
be laid out here. Um, yeah. um, Going back to Toranaga, and Toranaga is talking to one of his faithfuls in Miraji, and Miraji is basically informed that there is a spy. Well, he's letting them know, like, hey, just to let you know, Yabushige's looking for a spy. And he's like, all right, please let me surrender myself. And he says no. And this is like bad dialogue, if you ask me, or I don't know, maybe it is just like what you do to covert spies to remind them who they are. But he was like, I need you to remember that your name is an account
Canal.
Alcanal, thank you.
Canal.
Who you are a long-serving samurai. Please remain a spy and just, let's just play this out here.
I call this, but
Yeah, which is really, really cool. But anyway, at that point now, we do know that Blackthorne goes looking for Mariko. As I mentioned, she blames herself. Talks about the story with Fuji father and the lies behind that, and you know, basically talks about how secrecy works to kind of keeping people at bay, which is like I don't know, compartmentalizing is what this is. This is basically saying like what you don't know doesn't hurt you, essentially, and rather if we don't talk, then it's better that she says, I'm not gonna in our day and age, she would have said, I'm not giving Bontoro that energy because he fuels off the hatred. I'm not gonna give him that. And she says, listen, no more conversation between us. I'm just gonna honor my duty as a translator, but nothing else. But anywho, with that being said, um Blackthorn heads back. Everybody looks sad. We're trying to figure out what's going on here. The bird is gone because the gardener took it, and now the gardener's dead by the hand of Fuji because of that small saying that he made earlier that he said, like, if you touch it, you die. He obviously didn't mean this with intentions, and he also very much let folks know that, like, listen, he said touch you die, and he said since it was forbidden, it was Fuji's duty to do so. So now Fuji instantly pleads for her life, saying, please, I'm sorry. She basically gives her life by saying, please take my life for doing so. But as he mentioned, he says, like, you all do not take life. You don't value life at all. Let's go. He just tells them to go. He's not happy about what happened. He thinks the policies and just the ways of the culture. He says this is just completely unnecessary. He's not happy about the gardener's life. And yeah, he has that moment with the gardener and the rock, and it seems like a small moment, but obviously this was just monumental for him emotionally because he was able to bond with somebody that he ended up finding a moment of peace in, and somebody who seems to just be kind of doing it their own way. And I think that's cool because with everything that's kind of going on and really trying to avoid all the foolishness that's happening, maybe you do got to just once in a while find somebody that's just outside of the norm here, and that's what he kind of found with the gardener, somebody who just doesn't look like it's life or death, but somebody who's finding like the peace in between everything here. But Mariko and Toranaga is there. Mariko's letting him know everything about what happened at the house. He's basically dismissing everything. So like, listen, okay, cool, but like, I need you to stay as my translator. Like, yeah, granted, I know you can't. I don't need nothing to happen to my translator, but you're okay. So let's keep it going. What did you think about how he was just so dismissive about this?
Sorry, I just want to tie like 3 quick things. First, I want to point out that Toranaga hid the pigeons. So I'm wondering if this has anything to do with Yabushige and his treachery and not, trusting people. I have the few solid people I can trust, and maybe they'll address that later. back to the Mariko conversation, she mentioned that the consort's father was a drunk. So I'm wondering why she even threw that in there. I don't know if it's like to bring John down, like that these swords aren't as sacred as he thought, or I don't know if that's just her. Maybe she's depressed, maybe she's defeated, and like sometimes like people are like super angry, they'll lash out and say like mean things. I don't know if that could be something like that, or if it has like a maybe more of like a traditional meaning behind it. But it was like, why did she randomly yell out this information now? And
I, I
then
I just really quick, I just think that
yeah,
it's just a sense of just saying that like sometimes all the details doesn't matter.
yeah,
We build him up with great honor because it makes her feel better. It gives her means to move
that's
forward, and I think like she's saying like sometimes, just the silence could be beneficial in a way to kick giving people peace. And I think that's what her
mhm.
saying like I'm silent, and although everything around me is so destructive and I have this past, maybe this is what just keeps me going by just avoiding this, which yeah, there's no therapy back then, but God knows that everybody in sight needed it.
That's a point, because she basically just goes back to the whole like life and death. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and then yeah, like back to the Toranaga, he's basically like, well, you're his wife. He's allowed to beat you, but he's not allowed to beat my translator. I was like, God damn. So it's crazy because of this episode, I'm kind of starting not to like Toranaga.
yeah.
I don't know. We'll kind of see, I guess, more as the show goes on. But like him being like one of the main protagonists, I guess you're kind of like not supposed to like him, but like the way his story has gone so far, we were on his side. But I'm
Yeah.
almost seeing a side of him now that's more duty than human
Mm-hmm.
being, and I'm
Yep.
kind of wondering how that'll get in further. But yeah, back to the whole, I guess, interaction there with Toranaga. John is like, "Hey, man, I fulfilled my duty. I want my ship and my men, and I want to leave Japan." And like, they're like, "What's troubling you? Can you stop complaining?" And then Mariko's over here all depressed. She's like, "Life has no meaning." And then it's just like, oh man, there's just everything is so like dark in this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. 1000%. So John comes in and says, "Listen, I want my ship. I want my man. I need to leave. I did my duties. I need to leave Japan." But yeah, that's not going to be granted there. But you know what's funny? Toranaga looking at both of them was like, "Yeah, there's a shadow over the both of you." And as he mentioned, as John mentioned, like he had enough. Everybody in their lack of value in life. Like he just wants to leave here. And when he said like, man, listen, like the bird meant nothing to me, but the fact that he gave it meaning is what ultimately was the demise of this gardener, and he blames himself. And then we see a bunch of birds in the far, and like granted, anybody know when the birds are getting out of there, something bad is happening, and there is a massive earthquake. And I mean, the visuals on this was just insane here.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, Toranaga's basically hitting the Jurassic Park here with the hands back, telling everybody to stay back, only for him to fall in this little crater that's kind of built from this. But after that, everybody jumps after him, even Blackthorne, and he gets down there at the bottom of this pit. They dig him up. His swords are missing, which is interesting because we just had a conversation about life. And the first thing that Lady Mariko's like, "Where's your swords?" But then John, being who he is, gives the swords. He gives it to him as a gift, and he talks about his Lady Fuji's sword. And they kept it in a sense of honor. And maybe, I don't know, Toranaga has to know, but he did have a little bit of a laugh, but also said, "Thank you, dear." But with that being said, they get back up and they notice that the landslide is just completely destructive to everything down in the valley or anything with the village. So it's just bad. Get there to see that Fuji's hurt, but she's alive. But instantly, John, he goes and puts back up the garden rock. This is definitely a moment of honor to the gardener that he just had this big emotional little campaign about, wanting to leave, wanting to get back to his folks, really talking about how y'all don't value life because of what this gardener obviously meant to him. But also he's learning the culture because he talks about he can't have a garden without a rock. And if you're going to be rebuilding, you got to have that centerpiece. So that was a really, really touching moment for all the darkness that's happening, I really did love that moment, him putting up the rock as being one of his high priorities once getting back to his house. But we see Yabushige still looking for the spy, and they find this note, and the note blames the gardener, which means they tie this up into a bow. And Maruji, who's just here playing the game, we're going to see him really become a character going forward here. Going back to Osaka, not Osaka, Osaka, Japan, Lady Achiba is there. And this is where it gets interesting, because we get the moment that we didn't know we needed till we got it. It is her, and it is Oshido. Now we do know that she is the wife to the deceased father, the Takeo.
Oshiba.
And this is
Lady Oshiba.
Yes, who is the wife to the now, or the deceased, the Taiko, which we saw in the first episode and whatnot, and the mother of the heir to the throne, which is Yachiyo. So she comes in, and there's a lot of different things saying, but I'm just going to talk about the big points for me here. She feels that her son's life may be in danger, and I feel her, because with everybody trying to get power and trying to one way or another work their way up to be on the top of the throne or be in the Shogun, whatever it may be, she knows that there's only one rightful heir to the throne, and it is her son. But if her son's not there, then it comes down to the Council of Regents, and that's where it gets interesting. And you got to know, they haven't been saying it, but they definitely are trying to ensure. And I think she's like very passively aggressively telling Ashido, like, I know that you're plotting something, and I know that you're trying to get everybody on your side, just as much as you're a problem, as much as Toranaga's a problem, which means that she's looking across the board. And as she says, and she's right about how the hierarchy is that the council answers to her. So with that being said, she fears for her son's future, and she's really going to ensure that nothing is to happen to him. And I know that Ashido talking about he would give his life for him, but she's like, forget all the politics. The council will answer to me. I think this is the big and the first reveal of who our legitimate threat of this season is to see how far she will go. And then ultimately, with her not being on Oshido's side and not being on Toranaga's side, and with the council happen to answer to her, we're going to see how she sniffs out and protects her son going forward. And we know a mother will go to no ends. There's no ends to where a mother will go to protect her son, who is the rightful heir to the throne, in just the proper time. He just has to get a little bit older here. What did you think about the closing moment with what's her name?
Lady Oshiba.
Yeah, Lady Oshiba. Thank you.
It was
and the threat she's thrown out here to everybody.
It was definitely unexpected. I didn't really see this coming. I was wondering what's going on with the son, because he essentially, like you said, he's the heir to the throne, and he's like super important to this whole thing. So I've been wondering like what's happening with him. And then she is returning. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm so curious to see like I also want to know her motives. Is it about her son? Is it just that she was a young bride promised to an older man, and like she wants to take power into her own hands? Or is it that she truly cares about like her son eventually taking heir? Like, I don't know. We don't know much about her yet, so we don't really know her intentions. But I feel like with just that little scene, we can tell that she's going to be like a power player, because she's like, no, like the council's going to answer to me. Like, yeah. So she's taking her, like, she's saying like, no, like I'm here.
Yeah. And like, let's call it what it is. She has no power. She literally has no power, and she technically has no allies. So and what she does is going to be by manipulation only, and using her son as that pawn, whatever her motivations may be. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But her being truly introduced as, I feel, our true villain, or our antagonist going forward, I'm excited. I'm definitely excited, and I'm definitely excited to see how Ishido is going to respond to what he was trying to do this entire time, knowing that he still had somebody he had to answer to.
And I still want to go back to episode 3, the ending, because I think it was Lady Oshiba. I don't think it was Lady Mariko. And I don't know how I feel like this is going to be important later on.
Okay. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, folks, let us know your thoughts about tonight's episode. Yep, folks, that is episode 5, Broken to the Fist. We'll be back next week for episode 6 recap review here. But yeah, in the meantime, let us know your thoughts about tonight's episode. Thoughts, comments, your favorite parts, things we missed, other assumptions, and other things you was able to put together. Put all that in the conversation in the comments below. Be a part of the conversation with us. But until next week, folks, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back very soon.